The haunting of Bonnie and Clyde. In the dust-choked plains of East Texas, where the horizon stretches thin and the past clings like damp rot, the legend of Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow never truly died. By the year 2000, their story had fossilized into myth ballads of outlaw lovers, bank heists, and bullet-riddled escapes. But in the small town of Gibsland, Louisiana, where their lives ended in a hail of gunfire in 1934, something lingered. Not just stories, but a presence restless, vengeful, and tied to the land like roots in red clay. This is the tale of their haunting, a story whispered in dive bars and back roads, pieced together from those who dared to cross their spectral path. It was late summer, August 2000, when Sarah Mitchell, a 28-year-old journalist from Dallas, arrived in Gibsland. She was chasing a feature for a regional magazine, something to spice up their Haunted South issue. Sarah was a skeptic, raised on hard facts and deadlines, her notepad always tucked into her jeans. The Bonnie and Clyde ambush site, a lonely stretch of Highway 154, was her target, a place locals swore was cursed. The assignment was simple: visit the site, interview a few old-timers, and spin a spooky tale for readers. She didn't expect to believe it. Gibsland was a speck of a town, its main street lined with sagging porches and a single diner called May's, where grease hung in the air like a fog. Sarah started there, nursing a coffee, while May, a wiry woman in her 60s, recounted the legend. "They don't rest, you know," May said, wiping the counter with a rag. "Bonnie and Clyde, they're still out there. Folks see their car, sometime Mesa Gray Ford Vate, riddled with holes, tearing down the highway at midnight. No driver, just headlights cutting the dark." Sarah jotted it down, half smiling. "Ghost cars. Classic small-town lore." May leaned closer, her voice dropping. "Last year, a trucker swore he saw a woman in a red dress standing by the ambush marker. She waved at him, then vanished. He crashed his rig trying to stop, broke his leg, totaled the truck. You go out there, you be careful." Sarah nodded, humoring her. She'd heard worse tales of shadow figures, disembodied laughter, and the smell of gunpowder on windless nights. But she wasn't here for ghosts. She was here for color, for quotes, for a paycheck. That afternoon, Sarah drove to the ambush site, a half-mile stretch of rural road flanked by pine trees and scrub. A stone marker stood at the spot where Bonnie and Clyde's car was torn apart by a posse's bullets. The air was heavy, humid, the kind of heat that made your shirt cling to your skin. Sarah snapped photos, scribbling notes about the eerie quiet: no birds, no breeze, just the hum of cicadas. She chalked it up to the August swelter. Nothing supernatural about a hot day. As dusk fell, she set up a tape recorder by the marker, hoping to capture ambient sounds for her piece. The sky burned orange, then bruised purple. She sat on the hood of her rental car, a beat-up Chevy, and waited. The road was empty, the kind of empty that felt like the world was holding its breath. Then, faintly, she heard it, a low rumble, like an engine in the distance. Her pulse quickened, but she laughed it off, probably a local hotshot with a souped-up truck. The sound grew louder, closer, until it was unmistakable, the throaty growl of an old Vate. Headlights pierced the twilight, coming from the south. Sarah squinted, expecting a pickup or a muscle car, but the shape was wrong, low, boxy, like something from a black and white photo. It was a Ford, gray and battered, its fenders pocked with bullet holes. The car slowed as it approached, its engine idling with a sickly sputter. Sarah froze, her recorder still running. There was no one in the driver's seat. No one at all. The car stopped 10 feet away, its headlights pinning her like a spotlight. Her breath caught, her skepticism crumbling. She fumbled for her camera, but her hands shook too hard to focus. Then, from the passenger side, a figure emerged, not stepping out, but materializing, as if the air itself wove her into being. A woman, young, in a red dress that swayed despite the still air. Her face was pale, her eyes dark and hollow, but her lips curved in a smile that was both inviting and cruel. Sarah's mind screamed one word: Bonnie. The woman didn't speak, just pointed down the road, toward the marker. Sarah's legs moved before her brain caught up, drawn toward the stone. The air grew colder, sharper, like stepping into a freezer. Her recorder crackled, picking up whispers she couldn't make out. The woman in red followed, gliding more than walking, her dress trailing like smoke. Sarah reached the marker, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. The whispers grew clearer, a man's voice now low and urgent. "They're coming, Bonnie, they're coming." Sarah spun around, but the car was gone. So was the woman. The road was empty again, the cicadas silent. Her recorder had stopped, its battery dead despite being fully charged. She stumbled back to her car, her notes forgotten, and drove to her motel, checking her rear-view mirror every few seconds. That night, she couldn't sleep. The image of the woman in red burned behind her eyes, and the man's voice echoed in her head. The next morning, Sarah returned to May's diner, shaken but determined. She played the recorder, hoping something had been captured before it died. The tape was mostly static, but at the 2-minute mark, there was a clear fragment. A woman's laugh, sharp and reckless, followed by a man saying, "We ain't done yet." May's face paled when Sarah played it. "That's them," she whispered. "Bonnie and Clyde. They don't let go." Sarah's article was due in 3 days, but she couldn't leave Gibsland. Not yet. She needed answers. She tracked down a local historian, an old man named Clarence, who lived in a trailer cluttered with newspapers and Bonnie and Clyde memorabilia. Clarence had spent decades studying the outlaws, collecting stories from survivors of the ambush era. They weren't just criminals, he told her, his voice gravelly. They were trapped. Loved each other too much, maybe. That kind of love, it don't die easy. It festers. Clarence shared a theory. Bonnie and Clyde's violent end had bound them to the ambush site. The posse's betrayal, some say Clyde's own cousin tipped them off, left their spirits restless, unable to move on. "They haunt the road because they're still running," he said, still looking for a way out. He showed her a photo from 1934, taken days after the ambush. The bullet-riddled Ford, Bonnie's body slumped in the passenger seat, Clyde's in the driver's. The image made Sarah's stomach turn. She recognized the car. Over the next few days, Sarah interviewed more locals. A gas station clerk claimed his pumps turned on at night, spewing fuel with no one there. A farmer saw a man in a fedora leaning against a fence, only to vanish when approached. Each story chipped away at Sarah's rationality. She started dreaming of the ambush gunfire, screams, the smell of blood and cordite. In one dream, Bonnie's face hovered over her, whispering, "You see us now." Desperate for proof, Sarah bought a disposable camera and returned to the ambush site at midnight. The air was thick, oppressive, like a storm was brewing. She walked the road, snapping photos blindly, hoping to capture something, anything. When she developed the film the next day, one image stood out, a faint blur near the marker, 2 shapes that could have been people, one in a dress, the other in a suit. The clerk at the photo lab refused to touch it, muttering about bad luck. Sarah's article was published, a sanitized version of her experience with just enough spookiness to sell copies. But she couldn't shake what she'd seen. She moved back to Dallas, quit her job, and started researching Bonnie and Clyde obsessively. She found others who'd encountered Thema Trucker, a hitchhiker, a couple on a late-night drive-all with stories of the gray Ford, the woman in red, the man's urgent voice. Some claim the spirits weren't just restless but angry, lashing out at those who lingered too long. In 2001, a paranormal investigator named Tom Reed came to Gibsland, drawn by Sarah's article. He brought equipment, EMF meters, infrared cameras, voice recorders, and set up camp at the ambush site. On his second night, his cameras caught orbs of light dancing around the marker. His EMF meter spiked erratically, and his recorder picked up a woman's voice singing softly, a tune from the 1930s. Tom published his findings online, calling the site one of the most active paranormal locations in the South. His post went viral, drawing thrill seekers and ghost hunters to Gibsland. The influx of visitors seemed to stir something. Sightings increased. A group of teenagers claimed their car stalled on Highway 154, and they heard laughter from the woods. A ghost hunting team recorded footsteps circling their van, though no one was there. By 2003, the town had leaned into its haunted reputation, hosting a Bonnie and Clyde ghost walk every October. May's Diner sold t-shirts with the bullet-riddled Ford. but the locals knew better than to linger on that road after dark. Sarah returned to Gibsland in 2005, unable to resist the pull. She was different, now gaunt, haunted, her skepticism long gone. She parked at the ambush site, alone, and spoke into the night. "Bonnie, Clyde, I see you. What do you want?" The air grew heavy, and the cicadas fell silent. Then, from the darkness, the Ford appeared again, its engine a low growl. Bonnie stood by the marker, her red dress vivid against the night. Clyde was there too, a shadow in a fedora, his hand on her shoulder. They didn't speak, but Sarah felt their story, the betrayal, the fear, the love that burned too bright to fade. She understood now. They weren't just ghosts. They were a wound in the world, bleeding memory. She left Gibsland the next day, never to return, but she carried their story with her, a weight she couldn't shake. The haunting of Bonnie and Clyde persists. On Highway 154, the gray Ford still roams, its headlights cutting through the dark. Bonnie's red dress flickers in the moonlight, and Clyde's voice whispers on the wind. They're still running, still trapped, still bound by a love that death couldn't break. And those who linger too long, who listen too closely, risk becoming part of their endless escape.